Welcome, everybody. Today's passage is Mark 6:14 to 29. And it goes like this. It's the story of the horrible end of John the Baptist. King Herod heard about this, for Jesus' name had become well known. Some were saying, John the Baptist has been raised from the dead. And that is why miraculous powers are at work in him. Others said, he is Elijah. And still others claimed, he is a prophet, like one of the prophets of long ago. But when Herod heard this, he said, John, the man I beheaded, has been raised from the dead. For Herod himself had given orders to have John arrested, and he had him bound and put in prison. He did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, whom he had married. For John had been saying to Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him, but she was not able to, because Herod
Richard, you're muted. And
Richard.
We can't hear you.
Ah.
We've lost you.
We might have to start again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I really don't understand how that happened.
I think Caroline muted everybody and then...
No, I didn't. I muted people individually.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But Richard didn't manage to mute himself.
Oh.
I didn't press any buttons.
I don't know what happened.
You don't have an errant cat moving around today, do you?
No. The cat is in the corner fighting a bed.
So I think you might have to...
Yeah, I think you're going to need to start again.
I'm sorry.
Take two.
Take two.
Okay, can we mute ourselves?
Yes.
I got caught out by Richard starting, and then I muted other people, but I didn't mute Richard. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. It was random.
Very random.
See you on the other side.
Okay. Okay, let's try that one again. This story is Mark 6:14 to 29. King Herod heard about this, for Jesus' name had become well known. Some were saying, John the Baptist has been raised from the dead. And that is why miraculous powers are at work in him. Others said, he's Elijah. And others claimed, he is a prophet, like one of the prophets of long ago. But when Herod heard this, he said, John, the man I beheaded, has been raised from the dead. For Herod himself had given orders to have John arrested, and he had him bound and put in prison. He did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, whom he had married. For John had been saying to Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But she was not able to, because Herod feared John and protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled, yet he liked to listen to him. Finally, the opportune time came. On his birthday, Herod gave a banquet for his high officials and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests. And the king said to the girl, ask me for whatever you want, and I'll give it to you. And he promised her with an oath, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, up to half my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" "The head of John the Baptist," she answered. At once the girl hurried in to give the king the request. "I want you to give me right now the head of John the Baptist on a platter." The king was greatly distressed because of his oaths and his dinner guests. He did not want to refuse her. So he immediately set an executioner with orders to bring John's head. The man went, beheaded John in prison, and brought back his head on a platter. He presented it to the girl, and she gave it to her mother. On hearing of this, John's disciples came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. It's a little bit of an odd story, this. We get introduced to John at the beginning of the gospel, at the very, very start. And interestingly, his relationship to Jesus, because of course Luke has him as Jesus' cousin, is not mentioned at all. He's just a prophet here. And he sounds like this really big character that's going to be a huge part of the story. But then he drops out. Some of John's disciples come and ask Jesus a question in chapter 2, and then we hear nothing until we get this odd story asking about who Jesus is. And the author seems to suddenly remember, "Oh, I've not told you about John's arrest and death. I'd better do that now." And it's, I think, a very unusual story because the rest of Mark is completely focused on Jesus' story. It's Jesus did this, Jesus did this, that. This is the only time we sort of, the action pans away, the camera pans away from Jesus. It's also an odd story because it's rather different from the story that the Jewish historian Josephus, who wrote a sort of account of Jewish life in about AD 80, tells about John the Baptist's death. According to Josephus, he was killed because Herod feared an insurrection. Josephus also states that Philip was Herod's son-in-law rather than his brother, but Herod's family was so complicated and incestuous, it's quite easy to lose track of who was who. And it got me thinking, what's the point of this story? What's this story doing here as this sort of weird interlude between Jesus sending out the 12 on the mission and coming back? Because it's sort of sitting in the middle of this story of going out on the mission and people coming back with amazing stories. And I think it's saying, even with the success of Jesus's earthly mission and all the stories of miracles and driving out demons, don't forget, Jesus has come to die. That's the point of this whole story. And the John story is like, it's a foretaste and a sort of spoiler alert for Jesus's story. And it got me thinking, because sometimes I think the brand of church we are in is so focused on what Jesus did on the cross that we almost forget his earthly ministry, or at least minimize it. I've heard lots more sermons where a preacher takes the passage from Paul and explains what Jesus did on the cross than I've heard about the life of Christ itself. So I'm really enjoying, when I get here, spending time in Mark and getting to know Jesus. Because I find the Jesus of Paul or Revelation, he's this figure that does great things, but it's always quite impersonal. He's this great person who does something and we're thinking about what he's done. With the Gospels, I feel you meet Jesus as a real person. He's complex, mysterious, infuriating, often quite cool. So I think I can get quite into just sort of thinking about Jesus, the earthly person. And what this story reminds us is that our brand of church is right, as was Paul. It's what Jesus does on the cross that really matters. It's why he's come. It's the point of the whole story. I'm glad we've got those personal portraits of him in the gospel too, but it's his death that is, in the end, the important thing. So I think today in our prayer time, we ought to spend some time thanking Jesus for what he's accomplished on the cross and the change he's made, that he died so we might live. Thank you very much.